to the Habibis, three game developers drinking good Arab tea. I'm your host for this week, Osama Dorius.
And I'm Fauzi Masmar. And I'm afraid I have some bad news for you here, Osama.
Oh no, what's the bad news?
It's not three Habibis today either.
What do you mean it's not three
It,
Habibis?
it
It's
just stuck
always.
with me. It's always three Habibis, yes, but I mean,
Yes.
on the episode, that is.
Oh, who's. Well, I think I can figure out who's missing. If you're here.
you have you have two
and I-
guesses.
well, I'm pretty sure it's the Habibi cat.
It's the Habibi cat.
The
Indeed.
Habibi cat is missing.
Yeah, Habibi cat is
Oh.
missing.
Oh,
The giant
no.
3-meter high Habibi cat.
Well, for all of you who are not regular listeners who might not actually know who's missing, I don't know how many of you are out there who are jumping in at episode 39, but unfortunately, we're missing our good friend Rami Ismail. He traveled to a place and got lost in time zone land. So
Now that there's travel happening again, I have a feeling this is gonna happen to all of us a lot.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think that we're gonna have to get more guest speakers to cover for whenever this happens, because all three of us before the pandemic were pretty heavy on traveling. I mean,
Yeah.
no one comes close to Rami. Let's face it, but still. So I think this is going to be a more of a regular thing. So we should expand our roster a little bit to cover for it. I think we'll be fine.
Yep.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that I was really curious about. I have not set foot on a plane since the beginning of the pandemic,
Ah.
and I think the first time I miss it. I didn't like it before. It's not travel that I liked. It's being in getting to the destination that I liked. Right? I don't
Yeah.
know how many people actually enjoy the travel,
Mm.
but when you're missing a thing that you got so used to that you associate with good things, you start missing it, and I really do miss it.
Yeah. I miss the gaming events for sure, and because that gives us the opportunity to catch up with people from all over the world, get to see friends, hang out, talk about games.
Yeah.
So more of that I miss a lot. I miss also being on stage and doing talks
Oh yeah,
with
absolutely.
people in the room.
Yeah,
I do a whole bunch of these Zoom call talks and stuff like that. But
yeah.
it's not the same. The digital conferences, I don't get to read the room as I'm
I
doing the presentation, right? And that is something I really miss. Like when somebody gets something, I could see it in their eyes,
I
or when
agree.
people don't get something, I could drive a point home. Or like when I say a joke, I can see if people are reacting to it or not.
Yes,
But like,
absolutely. The joke part hurts the most because you're like, should I keep going with this joke? Because a lot of
yeah,
jokes, it's the running gags, right?
yeah,
You tell the first part, and then you don't know if it hits or not. You just uh, I don't like the ones I like the least are the pre-recorded talks, the ones where you
yeah,
have to record them. When you give a live talk, you give yourself a lot of slack for messing up a little bit here or there,
yeah.
and
Of
it takes off
course,
a little bit of the pressure. And like you said, there's a little bit of feedback, a little
yeah.
bit. You could
And
look
there's
at
the
the chat.
chat. I
Yeah, the
usually ask
chat.
for people to interact in the chat so I can at least get some kind of reaction, and I'll be joking around with the people in the chat or something like this, so it feels more like a back and forth. But if I'm pre-recording something,
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of need to joke to myself almost, so to kind of enjoy the ride for what it is. Right? It's kind of like when I was recording the Suhoor bites.
Yes.
I guess all these digital conferences kind of prepared me to do a single person podcast. I can now
I
talk
hear
to
you.
the ether for 40 minutes and laugh at my own jokes because I need to be this one man show.
I hear you. Though I guess the only part of traveling I don't miss is the random checks that weren't really random.
Yeah. Well,
But it's
that's because they removed the randomness part of it, so they're no longer they're no longer fun.
no,
You know it's
exactly. There's
coming.
no surprise.
No surprise. You like the random checks to surprise you, but oh, I haven't
Exactly.
been random checked in a while. That's nice and refreshing.
exactly. Yeah, but I mean, I'm still I'm still hoping that my first plane trip is going to be GDC next year in 2022. I don't have any
Is it
plans to
happening on the
go.
same time next year?
I
Is it
believe
March?
it's March 20th this time, so it's a little because it fluctuates. It's either
Yeah.
beginning, mid, or end of March. I believe this time it's at the end of March. So I'm really hoping that COVID gets under control and we don't get another variant or whatever could
No, we're
happen.
done with variants. I'm
I
done.
really hope so. I really hope so. Fauzi,
Yeah,
I'm done too.
I'm done with variants. I
I
can't
just
take it no more.
I just hope the variants are done with us. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
um,
Yeah.
you know, like my birthday is in March. So like
So's mine.
my birthday is March 16th. What is yours?
Mine's March 27th.
Oh wow. Oh my god. So like, my birthday almost always comes around GDC.
Yes, so's mine. Mine's usually the last day or the day after.
Mine is
Or
usually like the day before. So
That's incredible.
so like for me, like before the pandemic, the 12 years prior to the pandemic, I never missed a GDC.
Yeah.
And like for me, my birthday is always celebrating with my friends and game devs from all over the world because they have to gather in that one place for GDC anyway.
Absolutely.
So I end up having like
Absolutely.
a massive party every year.
Oh,
So
that's incredible.
I
For
miss
for
that. We should do
for
a joint Habibi's birthday.
Oh, I am so down. I am so
For-
down for that.
we
For
can like together hold a knife and cut the cake.
Hire a photographer to capture the
Hire a
moment,
photographer, like
right?
Habibi's birthday. We have a picture of us, like one of the fan art that we get on the cake.
I love it. It has to be a tea party just to keep it consistent. You know
True
that,
that,
right?
yeah. It's 100% halal party.
Halal tea party. This is happening. You know that. Do you have any plans of going to GDC this year?
I do now.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do
Habibi tea party coming up.
it. I'll tell you, man. Like, if the travel restrictions and all of that is off, I will not miss a GDC again. Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
it's. I guess like if they ever move it or something, it's not where it is specifically. It's not that it is in San Francisco or anything like that. It's
Yeah.
because it is the conference in which everybody
Yes.
gathers to. I think the closest second to me would be Gamescom.
Yeah. I've never been to a
Gamescom is
Gamescom actually.
getting like you've never been.
No. It's
Yeah.
been on my bucket list forever.
Cool. I mean, like in Europe, it's like that. Like
Yeah.
like how because GDC in San Francisco, all the developers in North America, they kind of like, yeah, it's not that far, so I might as well do the trip.
Yep.
Gamescom is kind of like that for like the European developers.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, but I also like I get to see a lot of the Middle Eastern developers too.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense too. The location is much, much closer.
Exactly. It's much closer to them. So like I get to see like my friends who still do game dev in like Jordan or other areas in the region. I
Yeah.
usually run into them in Cologne. And Cologne is an amazing city and I love it. So yeah. So hopefully next year we'll do both.
Inshallah.
Uh,
Wait, so Gamescom is less of a developer conference and more of a game it's like PAX, right? Or did I get it wrong?
it's more like E3, I would say, but
Oh, okay, okay.
Gamescom come like in two parts. There's developer days and then there's public days.
I see. I
And
see.
in developer days, it's like a massive. I was gonna say Makohari. It's
Mhm.
the Cologne Messe is a giant conference hall, and it has a lot of areas to do business. So actually, like the business days, you get to see all the exhibitions, of course, and they're like E3 sized. I think now probably much larger at Gamescom. Like
Mhm.
showcases of giant TVs and like the whole
Shebang.
pizzazz.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's like a lot of like meeting room areas and stuff like that, so you can actually do business and talk shop and that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And with the business, there's usually another event called DevCom, which is talks and conferences that just for developers for developers. But
That's really cool.
similar to the Talking Game Show and to E3 now,
Yeah.
after all the dev stuff are done, they open it to the public, and that's usually when I run away. Like that's when I leave town,
Yes, yes.
because like
So
I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people. I don't know, maybe I'm exaggerating, but a lot of people, like
yeah.
they come to the city and they flood the show floors.
100%. I've been to several conferences that are set up that way. Like we have Mega Migs in Montreal as well that are set up the same way. We have 3 dev days and three like what do you call it? Open days, I guess.
Yeah,
Dev days usually happen during the day of the week, so you skip work to go do it. It's
yeah,
awesome.
it is work, Osama. What are you talking about?
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm sorry to insinuate otherwise. Of course, it's work. It's a different kind of work, right?
Hmm.
And I've gone to the one in Toronto as well that set it up the same way. And same thing. As soon as they open up the floodgates, at that point, I've seen my friends. I'm tired. It's been a few days. I've
Yeah,
listened to talks. I've benefited from it, and I just disappear.
yeah, yeah. I
So I
mean,
think
like
that's kind of common.
in the Gamescom, even during the dev days, you can actually get to play some games as well.
Yeah,
Let they
lineups
be
are
on the
much
show
shorter.
floor, and yeah, because there's not that many queues. Everybody
Yeah,
there's kind of developers, and you can get in and play some games, and like also like you can catch up with your friends who are like working the booth or something like that. But when
absolutely.
it's public days, the lines go on for days. You know,
Yeah, this is like no point.
a Tokyo Game Show was the same. I don't know if you've ever made it over there.
No, no,
Uh,
I've never gone either. I have a
Tokyo
long
Game Show,
list of cons on my bucket list that I've never been
yeah.
to.
I feel like there was an era in which like Tokyo Game Show was like the show.
Yeah.
Like it's still a pretty big show in Asia, but I feel like it kind of shrunk a bit
Okay.
since its heyday. I think like from the late '90s till the mid 2000s,
Why do you think that happened?
it was huge. Um, I think it. How do I say? How do I think? Like there was a period of time, especially during the PS3 era, in which like Japanese development was kind of struggling and making the transition to HD development.
Okay.
Kind of like you go with PS2 games and stuff like that, and then moving out to teams of 300 and 400 people.
Yeah,
A lot of studios struggled with developing their own tech to kind of match that.
I see.
So like during the PS3 era, there was significant output of Japanese companies still, of course,
Hmm.
but they had a hard time.
Hmm.
And then like with PS4 onward era, they started adapting a lot more modern tech and Unreal 4,
Okay, that makes
Unreal
sense.
Engine, and that kind of stuff. So like a lot more solutions became available, and the kind of like the industry um, started moving up a bit. But the other thing is that what happened in Japan, more concretely, is that traditional console sales have been declining.
Okay.
So like the since the PS3 era, so like the PS2 was kind of like the peak with the Wii, of course, if you add that
Hmm.
total of number of units sold in Japan.
Hmm.
And then from the PS3 to PS4 onwards, the number of Japanese households that have consoles have been significantly dropping.
Yes, I remember
Uh,
reading about this where like they became more of I don't want to say portable, a more portable market,
Definitely
right?
portable.
Yeah.
It's a commuter society, so like portable has always been huge.
Yes.
But also mobile gaming has took off
Yes.
and never really like slowed down. So like mobile gaming in Japan is huge. Compared to the population, for example, like there was a period of time in which like mobile gaming in Japan brought revenue that could rival the US.
Wow. Wow.
Um, yeah, so it's like it was mobile gaming in Japan is huge, and then like portable gaming still huge, but traditional gaming was started to take a back seat. So traditional AAA development started to focus more towards the West,
Hmm.
more than just the local market. There was a period of time in which Japanese developers were like, "We'll just make for the local market," and then there were even some games that never even made it outside of Japan.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, I
local market
remember
was
that.
the main focus, and then people were expanding overseas.
I remember I used to mod my consoles just so I could play those games that didn't make it. Like
Yeah, so
the
same.
most recent one of those was the fighting game Tatsunoko versus Capcom.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good
and then they
example.
ended up releasing it in North America. And I was so upset that I modded my console to play it. That was literally the only game I modded my console for. Literally,
Wow.
yes.
Hardcore.
Yeah. Well, fighting games.
Yeah, fair, fair. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like since then, it kind of the focus, like the Japanese development focus towards the West has been successful. Marketing of a lot of like Japanese IPs towards the West have become successful. So like games that traditionally you would have thought that wouldn't have had a market in the West, like Yakuza, has
Yes.
found a market,
Yeah.
and it's been growing. So they're like, okay, let's now remaster all of these games and translate them and release them out in the West. And yeah, that kind of approach. So it's it's interesting to see like the change, and I guess the change also like happened in the Japanese market also with a heavy decline in the arcade business,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because the
Absolutely.
arcade business was also quite quite thriving, I would say. 90s to early 2000s, the arcade business in Japan was still going strong, even though it was kind of dying out everywhere else in the world.
Hmm.
But also, like around the same time, they got like the teams were adapting to HD gameplay. The market size of Japanese consoles were dropping. Mobile gaming was on the rise. So all of these things kind of led to a pandemic shift, let's say, in like the Japanese game development scene, and obviously Tokyo Game Show adapted to it.
That's incredible. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's actually you reminded me suddenly of a memory I had.
yeah.
I was so I'd lived in arcades when I was like 13, 14 years old.
Oh
I
yeah.
no kidding. I spent a ridiculous amount of time in arcades.
Hmm.
And in Montreal, downtown Montreal, there were you could not turn a corner without finding three arcades. They were everywhere, everywhere,
Hmm.
everywhere. But there was one in particular that I really, really liked. All it was called is amusement. It was called entertainment. Like I don't know what the legal name is, but it just had one big sign that said amusement. That's it. So everyone called it amusement. Then when I started working in the industry, I was with my friend Hugo, who's a Brazilian
Hmm.
artist, great guy, and we were walking downtown Montreal. I wanted to show him like the city, and the amusement arcade was the only one that had survived at that point from my childhood. And
Hmm.
the shock, I walked in with Hugo,
Yeah.
and I recognized the person who owned it, like who
Oh
worked there.
wow, it's still
And
there.
I don't know his name. He doesn't know my name, but he said, "Hey, I remember you." Like it was like
Wow, that's crazy.
20 years that passed. And he said, "How's your father doing with his stores?" Because my dad had stores. He remembered details about me. I got
Wow.
emotional and I was like tearing, like right
Oh,
in
oh
front
my
of him with
god.
you. He goes
Yeah.
like, "What's going on here?" I like this is like it was a big part of my life.
Well, you
Like
spend a lot of
we
time there, it sounds.
yes. Oh, a ridiculous amount of time. And I chatted the guy up a lot. It's just
Yeah.
this is that's what you do. You go there, you make friends, and they're the people
Yeah.
who you like to play with, and obviously the people you don't like to play with.
Yeah.
That's their due. Where it's like, they're hugging the Street Fighter 3 machine. Let's go play Alpha. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, but like there's a culture that exists in those arcades that are different from one arcade to the next. And we used to go arcade hopping like as a group, right? We used to
Yeah.
go to, and some people were like some arcades had groups that were better at some games than others, and all that is kind of lost now that it's sad. Like it's not that I want to return to it. That would be artificial and it wouldn't be the same anyway.
Yeah.
But it's
It's
more
a
like
product of its time.
exactly. But that's something that people will I don't think will ever experience again. I don't see how they could. Where
Yeah.
you actually had like these groups that were part of a thing, moving on and bringing a little bit of what they had elsewhere. Like how do you replicate that when
Mhm.
everything is online and you have access to everything all the time?
Like in Jordan, I found that being replicated in modern era with like a type of establishment in which like yeah, I'm not sure if I mentioned it on the show before, but you can rent by the hour an amount of
Yes.
time that you spend with a console,
Hmm.
right? And like it's a group of so like you rent you go to this shop that has like 15 TV screens, and under each one of these TVs there's a console, and you go like I want to play FIFA on screen 11
Hmm.
for 2 hours, and then like you get the couch, you get four controllers, and you're playing FIFA with three other friends, and then you can order food and shisha, whatever.
Hmm.
And then like that place will have their champions, and then we'll
Yes.
start to find other places around town that have their champions, and then we'll all fight against each other. I think I told that story before. So that's like the
Yes.
closest
Great story.
replication that I found to the arcade days. But like for me, the arcade in Jordan was also quite popular. So growing up, I had very similar experiences to what you're saying. Like I spent a lot of time in that arcade. My dad hated the idea of me going to the arcade because for him it was
Yeah.
like this dark place where all the teenagers hang out and do drugs. I was like, that nobody's doing drugs in the arcade. Like, yes, and they smoke cigarettes and the place reeks. So like, yes, true, everybody's smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
But like for him, it felt like the arcade was me going into a nightclub or something.
Yeah.
I was like,
It's a
most of the time it wasn't. It was just like teenagers for the most part, lots of kids, and we just hang out and we're playing fighting games all the time. I used to love like Street Fighter. I grew up playing Street Fighter 2 on the arcades,
yeah.
all the way to Alpha and 3. I think you and I have very similar experiences there. Like, but put a nickel and
Yeah, exactly. It's a
playing with that
quarter over
nickel
here.
all day long.
Yeah. Oh, I wasn't that good. Excuse me. I wasn't good enough to play with a nickel long, but I tried. I have memory, like I spent too much money in the arcades. My dad used to complain. I remember the first time one of the Street Fighters. I'm pretty sure Street Fighter Alpha 3 came out. Like that day, I spent like $30 in the arcades. Like just because we were experimenting, we wanted to try different characters.
Yeah,
Everybody was a equal level, and it was the excitement, the hype around a new machine, a new game, a new fighting
yeah,
game. So like it's incredible, it's palpable.
yeah.
My dad actually owned a store next to an arcade, so I think that
Ah,
made it a little bit easy for him to know what it's about, like literally next door. So you walked in once in a while, he saw me and what I was doing, and there was nothing scary there, but I'm sure he would have been much more scared. The only thing he made sure, he's like, but you're not going to play those, and he pointed at, they have lottery machines.
yeah,
So when I was like, no, those aren't fun. I have no interest in those. He was like,
yeah. They're not fun at all.
they're no fun. I had zero, and he saw it on my face. So he's like, okay, I'm not worried. As long as it doesn't become a, a gambling habit, I'm totally okay. You can have fun with your geeky friends.
Is that how you developed your love for video games? Is that because you
Yes,
used to go with your dad to the shop and then you just wander into the arcade?
I think that was. I remember the first time I played a video game, period, and fell in love with it, and it wasn't that. But like when I actually like fell in love, yeah, the arcades were a huge part of that. The first time I
Mhm.
played a video game is when we were in the Arab Emirates, and we went over to like a cousin's house, but like I use quotations with cousins. It's like very,
Mhm.
very, very close family friends,
Yeah.
where we're practically and we were related somehow, but like not exactly cousins. They had an Atari, and they had a game that for the majority of my life I didn't know what it was called. I just remembered what it looked like, and it was a game with tanks where you shoot pellets and they bounce off the walls.
Yeah.
And my mind was blown. I'm like, I can interact with the TV, the moving images, I could make them move. And I was like maybe 3 or 4 years old, and I was asking for an Atari from that day on, like forever. The game is called Combat. So yeah, I'm
Mhm.
a little old. It's, if you look at it now, you're like, what, that? Yes, it was that. But like I pestered and bothered my parents for a console, for a computer. It's eventually I wanted a Nintendo because that was a hot thing. Everyone wanted a Nintendo,
Yeah.
and my dad went and bought me a Nintendo that turned out to be a Sega Master System. I still fell in love with it. It was still a
Yeah.
great console, and I got my Nintendo later. But those were my formative years.
Yeah.
The arcades, it's when I started working with my dad when I was pretty young. I
Mhm.
don't know how common it is for other people, but for me, it was like, when I was young enough, I used to go and like broom the floor and make $7 a day or something like that. And those $7 would go to either comics or arcades. So like I was like maybe 11 when I set foot in my first arcade. It was next door, and it was it was just next door to the store, and I used to like it's like it's so attractive to kids, flashing lights, sounds, all
Yeah.
these colors.
All
How
the
could you not
sounds
want to?
coming out of it.
Yeah, exactly. So of course it's like I really wanted to be there, and I spent my breaks there. I spent before starting my shift there. I was eager to go to work because it was right next door, and there was another comic book store not too far away called 1 Million Comics, and I like also go there and pick up comic books. That like yeah, I was huge on entertainment. So I
Yeah.
can't point at one thing. I was in love with it the first time I saw it, and that love never stopped. It just
Yeah.
kept growing to
Yeah,
this
that
day.
sounds like, like around your dad's shop, there was all these kinds of childhood
Yeah.
infatuations that you still
Well, it
maintain
was
till this day.
downtown, right? So
Yeah,
all the fun things are downtown.
that's
Yeah,
super cool.
absolutely.
That's super cool. Yeah,
So how
you
about
know, every now and then I like reminisce with the arcades. There's
yes,
like, a couple of barcades here in Stockholm, or like in most cities, really. You
yeah,
go in and you play a bunch of games, but like, like you said, you can't replicate
no,
that point in time anymore, especially when you can play a lot of the games on the arcades on your phone even.
yes,
So
exactly.
yeah, but there was a magical time about that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And anyway, it's all good. Like I'm not saying, hey, all y'all are missing out, but you really are. It was something really special about that. But it's
Yeah,
okay. There's special things about what we're doing now too.
exactly. Every
Different.
time has its beauty, so they say.
Exactly.
Have you
Exactly.
played any modern video games though?
Maybe we should segue into that. Yes,
Yeah.
actually,
Oh, you doing it
I
again, man? Calling out my segues.
I'm sorry. Okay. I'm going to stop doing that. But I'm just impressed
No,
by
no,
them. They're so
don't stop.
good,
Yeah, thank you very much.
effortless.
I welcome the compliment.
Okay, where do we start? How about we start with the Outer Wilds DLC?
Oh, yeah, tell me about that.
So I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I played Outer Wilds a little bit late. I played it, I believe it was at the beginning of this year, actually.
Hmm.
So I had missed it when it first came out. I looked at screenshots, wasn't too impressed. Someone described it, also wasn't impressed. Tried the game, and it blew my mind. It's
Hmm.
possibly one of my favorite games of all time. I really think
Wow.
it is. There are moments in that game, like the whole game is a tutorial. Like I know I'm selling it really badly, but the whole game is a tutorial to a thing. And when a very subtle, slow, clever, incredible tutorial to a thing that you have to understand in the game to progress. And
Yeah.
the moment where that thing clicks was one of my all-time favorite gaming moments in my life. It's I'm never going to forget it. The moment where I'm
Wow.
like, I figured this out because of everything that you laid in front of me, and there was no hand holding. I like that was it's exploration as a reward. It's knowledge as a reward, unlike any other I've seen before. So like it's that moment that I love. I loved a lot of things about it. There's constant discovery, but that
Hmm.
specific moment where you just everything comes together and you're like, I get it. It was incredible. It was
Wow.
incredible. I don't think I have never definitely never experienced it in video games before, and I don't think I'll ever experience it in video games again. And that's why when the Outer Wilds DLC was announced, I
Hmm.
was like cautiously optimistic and worried and nervous and all the things at the same time. Because to me, other than the controls, the flight controls weren't great. Other than that, it was the perfect game. Didn't ask you welcome. It had a lot of places to explore. I really loved the Outer Wilds. I realize now that I didn't really explain what the game is. So for anyone listening
Yeah.
who doesn't know the game, they're like, "What is it?" It's basically a space exploration game where after like the first 20-minute loop, and yeah, it loops in a similar way to Deathloop, um, where if you die, you start over again. Except the only thing you keep is the knowledge that you got from the first trip or the previous trips. And there are a lot of planets, and they behave in very weird ways. And this mystery about an ancient civilization that came to your solar system and died out, and why they died out, and and it ends like and you figure this out really quickly. The loop ends in a giant explosion, right? And
Hmm.
you're trying to figure out maybe how to stop it, or maybe why it's happening. You're not sure. You're trying to figure out what you're trying to figure out at the same time. So anything I say more than this is probably going to delve into spoiler territory, and I would not spoil this game. This game is one that must be explored. So let's talk about the DLC.
Yes.
I didn't finish it yet. I put in a good 2 or 3 hours. I'm pretty far. I think I'm at the point where I just have to figure out one puzzle, and then I can wrap it up. I'm pretty sure that's where I am, but I could be surprised. Maybe there's more. Uh, the DLC is really good so far. What I really like about it is it doesn't feel like a DLC. It feels like I might like this. It would not have been a stretch for me to say for someone to tell me, "Oh, did you go to such and such place?" What? No, I didn't know that place existed in the original game. And then I boot it up and I go to that place and I'm like, "Oh, wow!" Like it felt like it was woven from the same cloth, right? Like it had a similar sense of discovery and mystery. It felt like it belonged
Mm.
in the world, which I really absolutely love.
So
However, it sorry, go ahead.
how do you access it?
So they added a structure on the main on Earth or Earth. Sorry, that's how they
Yeah.
call it in the game. They added a structure that's a radio tower, and when you go to the radio tower, like without again spoiling it, it
Hmm.
tells you pretty much. It gives you a clue where to go next. You just
Hmm.
follow that clue and with your spaceship, and then you're able to find a thing that's going to start that adventure. So that radio tower thing, if no one tells you that how to start the DLC, you won't know. I actually had to Google it.
Oh, wow.
I was like, okay, how do you start this thing? I'm not going to start flying all around space to see what's new
Yeah.
in a galaxy. So I just wanted that first initial push to where to go. And then
Hmm.
he said, "Oh, there's a radio tower on Earth." So I just flew around the planet, found the radio tower, and that was enough to. to propel you forward, and then it's a small one mystery after the next. Like what does this mean? How does this connect? And then you end up in a brand new, completely new location that feels like it belongs in the world of Outer Wilds. Like it feels like it could have been just another location from the many that you've already experienced before. It has different rules. It has a new mystery, and I haven't solved it yet. I'm
Oh.
not at the point to tell you it was worth it, but I am at the point to tell you that the going through it has been the same feelings as I had with the Outer Wilds playing at the original time, minus that huge, the when everything clicks.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that means that it doesn't have it or it's coming later. But I'm the difference is okay. This is going to sound like a funny analogy, but you've watched The Sixth Sense, right?
Yes.
The big twist in The Sixth Sense, nobody saw coming, and it's one of the biggest reasons that Sixth Sense did so well. Is because it
Yeah.
shocked everyone, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Every other movie that tried to do a big twist after, even if the twists were good,
Hmm.
especially the years preceding it, because everyone anticipated that robbed it of its magic, right?
Yeah.
And that's why how I feel a little bit. That's why I was a little apprehensive about just there being an Outer Wilds DLC. I knew I was going to get it day one. I knew I was going to jump into it right away. I love the game like crazy, and I was looking for any excuse to come back to the universe. But like, they can't do the same thing again. That's not going to work a second time. The
Yeah.
magic was I didn't see that coming. I did not know I was playing this huge tutorial to like try to figure out a thing. I did not know what I was trying to figure out, and when it clicked together, that was incredible. So now I'm like half playing it, trying to figure out what they're doing,
Hmm.
in like from a game dev point of view, what they're doing. How are like what were their intentions? How were they going to wow us again? And that's not the same experience. You know what I mean? I'm not
Yeah.
expecting it to be as good as a game. To be honest, it's already what I wanted. I just wanted to come back to the world and like hear the same music again, and exist in that world again. And it's giving me that, and it's actually clever. The new location is pretty cool and special and different. Um, but yeah, so that's
Did
it
they
in a
build on like
nutshell.
the prior knowledge that you've had from the previous game in the
Uh,
DLC?
Mostly not. Not. It
Uh huh.
almost feels like okay. So there's two things. One is in the previous one. Do you remember you're able to send out probes?
Hmm.
So you need to know that, and that's something you can figure out by yourself, either when you play the game or they'll tutorialize it a little bit.
Yeah.
And then everything else is like new mechanics that they introduce that they feel like they fit, but they're still new mechanics.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not building so much on the knowledge of before. It's actually trying something a little bit different. I
I
guess it's a
understand.
good thing in a way, right?
Yeah, that sounds cool actually.
Yeah. But
Cool, man.
yeah, so that was the first game.
Yeah.
Um, what else did I? Okay, I moved. I'm not gonna talk about it much, but I moved the needle a little bit on Deathloop,
Uh huh.
and I don't think I'm actually gonna finish it, and I'm a little sad about that. So Deathloop
Hmm.
was my probably my most anticipated game of this year. I
Yeah.
love the aesthetic. I was watching the trailers closely, and I don't know what happened. Sometimes it just doesn't land. I started playing it, and I there was nothing, no compulsion to come back and like play more.
Mm.
And I think it was just a sometimes I think I had a very busy week the first week that it came out,
Mhm.
and I didn't pick up momentum. And I don't know. I think that might be it. But now, like I defeated the first. How do you say this without spoiling? There's a series of objectives that you have to accomplish, and I accomplished one of the first objectives, and I know of the existence of the others, and that should be enough to like bring me so I could discover what they are. And I'm kind of like, yeah, mildly interested. So I'm sad. I'm actually debating whether I should just leave it for now, come back and start it fresh when I'm in a better
Mm.
mind space for it, or if I should just keep pushing through and seeing uh, if that's going to connect better. I don't know.
Yeah,
Either way,
I can completely understand what you're talking about. Rami and I were talking about the similar thing last week, so maybe you can probably relate to what we're saying. And we've seen all the objectives, as you called them,
yeah.
and we still like at the end of it also felt very similar to what you're saying, and which like
Yeah.
very hard to go back and play it. So like this week, I wanted to go back and play it, but I ended up just going back and playing something else entirely.
Oh, what'd you play?
Um, I ended up playing Sable on Xbox.
Ooh, I played that too.
Ah, did you? Ah, cool. So
Yeah,
we can have a chat about this.
excellent.
It's a very interesting looking game. Like it caught my attention at first because of its exquisite visuals, if I may
Yes,
say so.
yes,
They have a very unique visual identity, and like um, I guess playing it has a lot of a Breath of the Wild kind of feel to it. I feel like that the developers are clearly inspired by that game.
hmm
It's an open world exploration game. There's like this cartoony feel to it. There's lively characters that have inspiration from Breath of the Wild as well. I feel in like how the villages are structured and how you can get quests by talking to people.
absolutely.
Mm, there's the mechanic that you can climb everything like Breath of the Wild as well. There's mounts that help you travel the world. You can kind
There's
of go
gliding.
everywhere from the beginning, really, but
Yeah.
you kind of want to follow the story thread because it threads things throughout.
hmm
Um, Also takes a book from Breath of the Wild, open world design. By that, you can put your own markers at some point of where you should be. So you talk to a
Yep.
character, tell you, I need these three things, and then you put your markers of where you're supposed to go, and then you're out you go, and you try to collect them.
Absolutely.
So I found it to be very impressive. To be Because it's an independent studio that built this game. I don't know the team necessarily. I think their name is Shedworks.
hmm
But I know that they're published by Raw Fury. I have a bunch of friends over there, so like they mostly work with like independent developers of varying sizes, but mostly medium to small.
hmm
So to see like a developer like that pull this pretty like it's
Like
a decent
ambitious, right?
scope
Yeah.
together is pretty cool. The visual identity I liked quite a bit, and I like there's a small mechanic in this game that I actually quite liked.
Okay.
Um, there's like the objective markers in
Yes.
video games. I think it feel like it's been a struggle, or not a struggle, but like every game tried to tackle it differently.
Yes. I
Some
know
put
what
the
you're gonna
quest
say.
marker on the map, some put it
Yep.
on the compass.
Yep.
Uh, in Ghost of Tsushima, the wind guides you to the objective marker. In
I
some
love
games, it
that.
just draws an arrow on the floor for you.
Yeah.
So I feel like as developers, we've always been trying to tackle how can we let you guide you towards the objective without having you play on the map the entire
Yep.
time, you know?
Exactly.
So what we want you to look at the game world, not to be looking at the map. Like the older GTA games had that, in which when you're driving, you're just looking at the map because that's guiding you to the objective. You're barely looking at the game world. And since then, I think a lot of game design has been trying to go away from this. And in this game, they have this mechanic in which like you hold the shoulder button, and it creates like almost like a halo around you.
hmm
And on that halo, there's the objective markers. So as you
Yes.
walk, you can see if you're walking in the right direction or not. I thought that was pretty neat.
It's really neat too. And if you look carefully at the character pulls out a compass when you're doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah, which I thought was really cool as
that's
well.
pretty cool.
Yeah, because it doesn't take you away from like the game. Like you actually
Yeah,
have that connection with the character as well when you have the compass, and it worked really well. The only
yeah,
thing that didn't always work great, and I thought it was okay, is it didn't take into consideration verticality, which is
no,
fine. I
yeah.
wouldn't do it necessarily that way anyway. With a compass, it doesn't really make sense.
Hmm.
But there was a little bit of I don't get it. It's supposed to be right in front of me. Oh, I see.
Yeah,
It's right on top of me. A
right
lot.
on top of you or something like. Yeah, I guess like
Yeah.
there's things that you can do with that as well. Like the icon could have
Yeah,
things
a
around it
little
to
up
indicate
arrow indicator.
verticality. Yeah,
Exactly.
but
Yeah,
like it's a cool little mechanic, I guess that can be iterated on and developed better.
absolutely. There's also a button where you could just sit.
Yeah, that's pretty
That
cool,
was an
isn't it?
innovation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
Sometimes,
Ghost of Tsushima had one where you could kneel, I think, like pray, which is
yeah, that's right.
close. But
That's right.
otherwise, I haven't seen one that didn't have a function. Even in, I think in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it passed the time or something like that. Usually it
That's right.
has some other secondary function.
Metal Gear, you smoked a cigarette
Yes,
to pass the time.
exactly. But yeah,
Yeah,
I liked it visually. I have to say it was a little off putting at the beginning because it felt like the animation skipped frames,
yeah.
and
I think it's
us
deliberate.
it's definitely deliberate. It's artistic, and I you get used to it fast,
Yeah,
and then absolutely gives it a little bit of more of that visual identity that you're talking about. So it's
yeah,
not a bad thing, but for
yeah,
a second, I'm like, am I stuttering? Is
yeah,
this lag?
It's
And
like a
there's
Spider Verse style
yes,
animation.
exactly. What I think the reason is I think there were a handful of optimization issues with the game. There are a few assets in the world that if you look at them, the game itself stutters a bit.
Hmm.
I'm sure you've encountered that in game development during like while working on
Yeah.
games, so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
So I think like when I started the game, you know, I do the usual thing I do. I walk around, I press every button, and I see what it does. Right,
Hmm.
while turning around, the stuttering of the arms and the stuttering of the world as I was moving, I actually wasn't sure if it was for a second. I wasn't sure if it was deliberate or not. And then when I got over it, I'm like, oh, okay, I see. The game is there's a lot of bike riding. That part I thought
Hmm.
was pretty cool and pretty fun as well.
Yeah.
The characters had Arabic sounding names.
Yeah. There was
Yeah, there was
Hilal,
like
I think, one of them.
Hilal and Idris, which is like
Idris, yeah, that's right.
Idris, yeah, which was really really cool, especially because the aesthetic was. I mean, it could have been North African too, like especially the Idris
Yeah.
with the dropped Idris at the beginning.
Yeah.
Uh, but I thought that was really really cool.
Both are
Uh,
Arabic words, though. So.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
And I just really like I like that. I like being in the world. I don't think it gave me enough to do personally.
Yeah.
But that's like a personal opinion. Otherwise, I think it was a very valiant effort. Yeah,
Yeah. I thought that it can get a bit buggy sometimes. That was
yeah,
like one of my gripes with the game. Like landing on a platform was sometimes unpredictable.
yeah,
The climbing itself did not work on all surfaces. It's a tough thing to pull off anyway. I mean, like Nintendo managed to pull it off, but it's tough to pull off. And I think
yeah,
sometimes it works against the game
yeah,
because it gets a bit buggy in all sorts of different ways. So
yeah.
that was one of my small comments on the game. The other comment is that while I liked the visual identity, I thought the night mode just did not work for me.
Yeah, yeah,
Like when the world is during there's a day night cycle, and like
mhm,
the shaders kind of get affected with the nighttime, and like how the game is visually during the night is just sometimes illegible.
yeah. I think
And
that was intentional because nighttime is illegible, but it wasn't
yeah,
visually appealing compared to the daytime.
exactly. So it made it. Yeah, I was like, I'll just wait for the daytime because it's not
Yeah,
cool to play during the night always. Yeah, but it's
yeah.
like I said, for a small team, pretty solid game. Also, this is not Breath of the Wild size in terms
No,
of like
not at all.
how much time you need to finish it. It's like a small
No,
little game that you can enjoy. So, uh,
absolutely. I
yeah.
thought there was one stylistic thing that I would have that I thought was odd as well. Like some of the choices of colors were a little off to me. Like you know when
Hmm.
you gliding and you have like this red orb that's around you.
Hmm.
Like I don't know. I didn't feel that really meshed with what I was doing. I didn't understand why it was an orb or why it was red. It felt more like I was shielding from damage or something. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's a lot of those are just like we were used to a certain visual language from games, and it
Yeah.
broke those. And that's not necessarily bad, but like at the same time, I didn't understand the intentionality behind the choices that they were making sometimes. So it could have been just a dev team trying things.
Yeah.
You know,
It's always cool,
yeah,
and to try something else. Sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't.
exactly.
Mhm.
So, do we have any other games to talk about?
Let me see. There's this other game I started playing, but I want to talk about that next week. I started playing Imposter Factory, but
Ooh,
I want to talk about that next week. So let me finish it first.
okay.
Uh,
So let's do that for next week. And how about we jump to my favorite segment of our podcast?
oh my god, I can't believe it, Osama! It's happening.
It's happening.
It's happening.
We are going to read your emails on the
Emails.
air.
Send us emails to info@thehabibis.com. That is info@thehabibis.com. Do you
Yes.
see how happy this made Osama to
Oh
read
my
the
god,
email?
I am jumping for joy.
Like you'd think you get enough emails a day.
I get way too many. I don't even want emails, but these emails bring me joy.
It's true that. True
All
that.
right. So the first email I'm going to read to you is by our reader. Sorry, I don't know if it's pronounced Jose or Jose, but it's either Jose or Jose Rivera.
Hmm.
And he titled it "Dinosaurs Are Rad," which is freaking awesome. He had a question, and the question was, "What specific teas do you all drink regularly?" And Ramy's not here to answer his part, but we could do ours.
Yeah. So
So
today, especially, I'm drinking coffee, so it's a bit of a cheat.
yes.
Um, I
Well,
like,
normally, what
yeah,
teas do you
I
like?
like a lot of Japanese teas. I like green tea. I like oolong tea,
Hmm.
and I like a particular brand of tea, soba cha, soba tea,
Oh,
which is like made out of buckwheat.
wow.
It's
Okay.
buckwheat tea.
I don't know
Yeah.
what that tastes like. I gotta try it.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah, we could probably find it in a lot of Japanese restaurants. But if you ever come over, I'll make you some soba cha.
Oh, I am looking
And
forward to that. I
yeah,
mean, coming over in general, but also the tea.
yeah, jasmine tea is also pretty good.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
Uh,
oolong tea is my favorite for sure.
I love all teas, and I make it a point usually to experiment. But because the question is, what do we drink regularly? I'm afraid my answer is kind of a little bit boring. I have,
Black tea is it black tea?
yeah, it's pretty much.
Yeah.
I have like two stable teas. I have orange pico, and I have when I want to treat myself, I have some Earl Grey. But
Hmm.
then I always get these like collections of like fancy teas or what do you call them? Like I, tisanes, is that a word in English too, or is that a French word I'm borrowing?
I
But
don't
you know,
know.
like the teas that are not like I love rooibos, which is not exactly a tea. There's no caffeine in it. It's more
Yeah.
like leaves and looks like flower petals to me. I don't know what it exactly is, but I love the taste of that. Um, I like Assam breakfast. Like I have a whole bunch that I just like regularly. Just when I need a change, I dip into. But my day to day is usually orange pico or a little bit of Earl Grey. Sorry if that sounds boring, but I drink a lot of tea, so
Do you drink it with like 5 spoons of sugar? Because
actually
that's
zero sugar,
what
zero.
that's the Arab style of drinking tea is always with like four to
Yes,
five spoons of sugar.
yes, that's how I grew up drinking tea, and then
Yeah.
eventually I cut out the sugar completely. But I do put milk in my tea. I put a
Yeah,
little bit of milk.
I drink it no sugar, no milk, of course,
Yes,
as well. But yeah, like but whenever I'm at the relative place, if they're serving the Arab style black tea in those
yes,
small little glasses, half of that glass needs to be sugar because otherwise you can't drink it. It's too
exactly.
dark.
It is. I often see it sweetened. Like sorry, not see it, but my family I often sweetened it with honey. We really liked honey in our
Ooh,
tea.
fancy.
Yeah, exactly. So we have more mail.
More mail. Send
More
us emails
mail.
at info@thehabibis.com. Make Osama happy.
Please, please, can you feel my joy?
I
Don't you
can
want me
feel
to be
your joy.
this happy all the time?
Yes.
So this second email is by Adam, last name A initial, where he's talking about, when I mentioned Free Guy got game development wrong, and even though it was otherwise a really good, funny movie, it, like, graded on me.
Hmm.
Well, he's saying, and I'll read the part where he says, in summary, I won't read the whole email, just the summary part. He says, Space Jam 2 successfully navigates some of the emotional struggles of a game development story. It is a
Yeah.
more accurate portrayal than Free Guy, and good about showing several real and plausible obstacles that indie developers might face. There are many efforts made to make the unrealistic Looney Tunes aspect of the movie differentiable from the realistic game development portrayal. Despite its young target audience, Space Jam 2 is a very accessible introduction to part of game dev and even captures some nuances found in very few movies. And okay, I watched half of Space Jam 2, which should let you know what
That's
I
not a good
thought
thing.
of the movie.
It's not a good thing when you're watching half a movie.
Half a movie, and that's
Yeah.
rare for me. Usually, I finish movies, even if I have to watch them in multiple sittings because I have kids and they don't always cooperate. But
Yeah.
usually finish my movies and my books. But I loved Space Jam the original.
Mhm.
It didn't click for me for Space Jam 2. However, I 100% agree with Adam. The parts about game development, specifically the parts about the relationship between a game developer and their parents,
Yeah.
uh, they rung true. Like, basically in it, LeBron didn't want his son to be a game dev. He wanted his son to follow in his footsteps. In his case, it's to become the most famous basketball player
Easy.
in the world.
Easy. Like, most parents would want you to be an engineer or a
or,
lawyer, and
or
that's
a
hard. He just
doctor.
wants
Yes.
you to be one of the best basketball players of all time. I mean, like, no
Exactly. But
pressure
like,
there.
even just the way that his son was kind of like an indie dev and worked on his game and coded things in and modeled them himself and all that stuff. It felt like the scope of the game he was making made sense for a single developer. Maybe exaggerated just a little bit, but not to the point of Free Guy, where two people making an AI that that became aware and infected another game and has a physical location in that game tied to a specific server. Like those kind of things that I just like. I kept giving it passes till I couldn't give it passes anymore.
Mhm.
I still recommend Free Guy as if you're able to, if you don't care about that stuff or if you're able to put it aside. It was still a funny movie. I can't, even though I agree with his points, I can't recommend Space Jam 2. I know a few people liked it, so try it anyway, but it's just not my cup of tea.
I didn't watch it, so I can't confirm or deny if this story is true.
Yeah. Sorry. It's all good. Now you have to watch it. That's your homework. Come back and tell us.
I have to watch it. Have to watch how LeBron James is doing parental pressure on his son.
It'll bring back trauma, right?
Yeah. Yeah, what do you mean game dev? Get a real job, like a basketball player.
It's so funny. I think that's it. I think we ran the gauntlet. Is this a good time to end it?
Go for it, man.
All right. So, as per tradition, please send us your emails at info@habibis.com. And thank you very much for tuning in. And Rami, we miss you very much. And
Yep.
you better not miss any more of these because it's not the same dynamic with
3 for 3 now. We've had
Yes.
two Habibi episodes.
Yes, absolutely. And hopefully it'll be the last ones because
Yeah. You never know. You never
you
know.
never know. All right, folks. Salam.
Salam.
That was the Habibis podcast for this week. I'm Osama Dorias, your host for this episode. You can find me on Twitter at Osama Dorias. My fellow Habibis were Rami Ismail, you can find on Twitter at @THA_Rami, and Fauzi Mesmar, who you can find on Twitter at Fauzi Mesmar. Send us your questions, stories, suggestions via info@thehabibis.com. Intro and outro music was provided by Malik Zubayla, and the logo was provided by Ibrahim Hamdi. The Habibis is a weekly podcast about 3 game developers drinking good era tea, with new episodes launching every Friday, inshallah. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcasting service, or check out thehabibis.com for more information. Thank you for listening, and Assalamu alaikum.